since you just said you live between China and the US, I wanted to ask, what's everyday existence really like in a first-tier Chinese city, say Beijing or Shanghai these days? Especially if you contrast it with life in the West.
Yeah, I mean, you asked specifically about first-tier cities, and that's where, unfortunately, that's where I spend. Unfortunately, I suppose, where I spent most of my time. I lived in China for 20 continuous years, from '96 to 2016, and lived in Beijing, except for about 6 months when I was in Shanghai. And yeah, I traveled around a lot, but yeah, where I was rooted was in Beijing. And since I've been going back uh, post COVID, I've definitely been spending most of my time anchored in Beijing. And I mean, it's a delight. I mean, the quality of life is absolutely splendid. I don't know where you want to start, but there's this sort of seamlessness to it that's made possible by the digital platforms and by the transportation infrastructure. From the moment you get off the plane, everything is just quite efficient. Gone are the days where it was, there were sort of hellishly bureaucratic systems to navigate. Everything just works really smoothly and is really, really affordable. I mean, I was lamenting the other day, coming back to the States, how, my first Uber ride back in the States probably cost as much as a whole month's worth of riding around daily in, DDs, same kind of rideshare deal. But often those cars were state of the art EVs. I mean, they were just really, really nice, vehicles, and just dirt cheap. You cross town for a couple of bucks. It's pretty astonishing. Life is good. There's no power outages. There is abundance. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we hear a lot now with Derek Thompson and Ezra Klein's book about abundance, and you live in a Chinese first tier city. That is a life of genuine abundance. There is a surfeit of stuff, restaurants galore, food that you just unimaginable quality of food and service. And then of course, just the infrastructure. The subways are frequent. They run, at very long, reasonable hours. They are extraordinarily clean, extraordinarily well air conditioned. Everything about them is pretty great.
Damn, the Chinese tourist board should really hire you, because this sounds
well. I mean,
absolutely
look,
fantastic.
This is again. I mean, with caveat that I'm talking about Beijing, I'm talking about Shanghai, I'm talking about cities like Shenzhen that I have the privilege to go to.
But there's a lot of those. Right?
There are.
Yeah.
But there's,
by the way,
there's a lot that's not that too.
Yeah. Life in the countryside must be quite different, right?
But still much, much, much better than it was. I mean, I just spent a month living in a very small town over the summer, where my band, I play in a rock band there. We had a writing retreat where we composed, the material for our forthcoming album. And it's a little town. It's obviously very touristy. It's in the mountains. You go there to get away from the summer heat of Beijing, in southwestern China. But even in a city like that, you just have, high speed, broadband connectivity, 5G connectivity. I was once in my life, and the entire time I was only once, when we went into the deep mountains to pick mushrooms. It was the only time I did not have 5G connectivity in China.
That's crazy. Slight pushback, based on absolutely nothing at all, but I hope you will humor me. I haven't even been to China, but
Really?
I was on a long flight back to Japan, where I live recently, and watched a really good Chinese movie. It was called Another Day of Hope. The story was about I think it's from 2023. The story was about a middle-aged manager who's always in a hurry because of his really demanding job. Sure. And that's why he hits a food delivery worker on a moped who's also always in a hurry, because he has to meet these very stringent delivery quotas. It's a really cool film, made in a sort of a hyper-realistic style. Feels very authentic. Also quite openly critical about a lot of social issues. Anyway, but what struck me the most was the portrayal of how kind of, I don't know if it's accurate, you're going to tell me, but how pressurized and stressful trying to survive in modern China in one of these cities really is. I gotta say, as a lefty, I was a little bit disappointed at that, because people in the film seem to be constantly rushing to get their money, trying hard not to get fired that day. having to pay out of pocket for more demanding medical procedures and stuff like this. I mean, besides some cultural differences, it felt just like life in the West does. Would you say that's accurate or semi-accurate?
Yeah, I don't think that doesn't sound far fetched at all. I mean, it is a pressure cooker. It is a rat race. I mean, that's why we have these phenomena like lying flat. Why people are constantly talking about involution. It's hyper competitive. It's very very hard. But again, for somebody who is gainfully employed, who does have a job, you only have the one job. You can work one job and live fairly comfortably. It's not like, I mean, I have friends in the States, okay, maybe not my friends, but, younger acquaintances who have to work two jobs and also have to pay exorbitant amounts of money for healthcare. Look, I'm not, I really want to amply caveat anything that I say when I talk about, gleaming infrastructure and stuff like that. That is not the entire picture by any stretch of the imagination. The world that's described apparently in this film, which I have not yet seen, but have heard about it. It's another facet of China for sure. Look, I mean, like any society, it's complex, and there are many hilltops from which you can view the surrounding countryside. Some of them are going to afford you some very lovely views. Some of them are going to be, a view of the garbage heap. There's not, it's by no stretch of the imagination an ideal society, and there are a lot of losers as well. Yeah, I mean, I think the pressure thing is very real. We talk about 996 work culture.
Yeah, that was my next question, by the way.
For a very long time, yeah. It was expected that you would work 6 days a week, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 996. Now, there's been pushback to that. A lot of companies have been, publicly shamed for having that. They're not legally supposed to do that anymore. Does that mean it's gone away? Probably not. I think there's still a lot of it. And it's not just in the workplace. I mean, the whole country kind of operates on KPIs, whether you are a high-ranking government official or, a lowly peon, you are answerable to somebody, and you've got these key performance metrics, these key performance indicators that you've got to turn in. That's kind of how the country runs.
So I live in Tokyo and I'm learning the language. It's a nightmare. And at Japanese school, I have a classmate from China who's about 2 levels above everybody else. It's really cranky. The guy's just so smart. I'm not happy about it. Anyway, he's a young guy working in IT, and he told me that working in Japan is kind of more chill than working in China these days because it's so competitive. And I was like, that can't be true, because for Westerners, working in Japan is an absolute nightmare, for squeamish Europeans such as myself, who views a 40-hour work week somewhat of a tragedy already. That's almost unimaginable. So I just wanted to ask, how competitive is it in China if you're a young person and you're trying to get a job?
Well, as we all know, there's a very, very high youth unemployment rate right now in China. Part of that is just simply a function of elite overproduction. 20 years ago, a tiny percentage of people of college age, 18 to 22, actually were enrolled in 4-year programs. Now, it's over 50%. I mean, it's multiplied just in the case of in the span of a few decades. That has it means they're graduating a lot of people for whom, the job market hasn't adjusted yet. I liken it to buying clothes for teenage kids who are growing up. I mean, you can't, the kid's never going to be dressed right. I mean, they're either going to be wearing clothes that are too small or too big. It's very hard to guess exactly when the growth spurts are going to happen. And that's the same with sort of planning on, do I invest in post-secondary education really, really heavily now when I have the money? And am I able to, make structural adjustments to the labor market at the same time? Probably not. You're probably going to have a period where you'll have pretty significant rates of unemployment or underemployment, or you're going to have, times as we did in the very, very recent past where there were massive labor shortages, including for white collar work. So, it's like buying clothes for kids. I don't worry too much about it right now. I think there are other factors, demographics, for instance, that are sort of mitigating against that. But it's tough to get a job. And when you do have a job, I mean, it's tough to keep it, right? I mean, people are very, very, there's expectations. And, look, I worked in an industry. I'm a guileless American. I was born in the States. I'm, a babe in the woods when it comes to understanding the complexities of Chinese office politics, which make, a TV show like Succession look like child's play. I mean, it's very complicated. And I fortunately have a consigliere at home in the form of my wife, who is a Beijinger and helps me to navigate these things really well. But I could only work in industries where I think the ethos was very deliberately copied from America, from Silicon Valley specifically. So that we're, deliberately free of politics, where, the structures were deliberately flat, where they had kind of this radical egalitarianism. So the internet company that you mentioned when you introduced me, that was one where the enterprise culture was very deliberately cribbed from the United States. And so, they encouraged you to be, guileless, direct, open, candid, and really frowned on you. When you evaluated your peers, like I said, KPIs is really big. One of the big questions was, does this person engage in office politics? And, the correct answer is no, of course not. They would never do such a thing.
But in a typical Chinese office, engaging in office politics is a must.
Yeah.
It's Game of Thrones. But where does the difference come from?
I think
That's fascinating.
It's endemic to. I mean, it's funny. A lot of people who live in the West, or who've encountered Chinese people outside of their native setting, I think have a very strange idea of what Chinese people are like. They see them all as relatively retiring, relatively modest, shy, not very assertive, and they seem somewhat simple. They're technically very competent or whatever. They do their job well. They have no idea of the internal life of the Chinese mind, which it actually grew up on what I would say are the most intricate psychological headfuck Machiavellian works of fiction ever devised by man.
Okay, do tell more.
Romance of the Three Kingdoms, for example.
Okay, I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, please do. I mean, it's the just explorations of human psychology, cunning, trickery, that will make your head spin. It's just absolutely wild. And you go into a bookstore in China, and the business books section is just filled with these sorts of primers. This is how you apply the stratagems of various. I mean, look, everyone in the West knows Sun Tzu, right? The Art of War. He's just one of many, and that is one work in a large body, a big corpus of strategy literature. It's pretty scary.
So there's definitely a market for this kind of sassy general of the past sort of literature.
Yeah. Not always so sassy. I mean, sometimes they're devastatingly, effective. But so yeah, I think it's funny. It's like that person sitting next to you in your Japanese class. You have no idea what they would be like in an office setting if you were not just competing with them for a good grade in the class.
Oh my God, now I see him in a completely different light. I'm never going to have beer with him again. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, follow and rate on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Every marketing tutorial out there insists it's really important that I hassle you about this, so I'm doing it right now. Also, if you'd like to, please support me on Patreon. This is a one-person podcast, as I always say. I do everything by my little old self. There's no team behind me. It's very sad, I know, but you can help by hopping on Patreon and finding the Smart Cookies podcast on there. And then last but certainly not least, as always, I have to thank my existing patrons, Tovarishin and Tovarishice, absolute legends. Without you, there would be no Smart Cookies, which makes you actual producers of this show. So eternal thanks goes to Amy Jontz, Matija Renčel, Florian Hauer, Peter Karba, Matija Zupančič, Dejan Žolnir, Derej, Rok Tržan, Saša Vipatnik, Neven Cvijanović, Juš Premrov, Sirkezi, Goran Ivašić, Anže Sever, Ole, Marin Ferrara, Aljaš Mahar, Štrole, Ajda Mancian, Miha Medved, Medinjo, Goran, Gordon, Lorenzo, Jurečuk, Mila, Carmen Veronica, and Tai Chi. I am deeply touched, so thank you very much.